This final video for Chapter 5 is on burns. And the threat with burns, especially severe burns, is a risk of infection. Remember how much of a barrier the skin is to infection? Well, with the skin burned, now pathogens have an easy way into your body. And another important point when dealing with burns is what can be extremely dangerous is dehydration, because you can have massive fluid loss through the burned skin. That leads to electrolyte imbalance, which could be life-threatening. Remember, your skin is waterproof. Not only does it not allow fluid in, well, burned skin can allow fluid out. So if you ever hear a burn victim, maybe on the news, they always indicate two things. They'll say, this person has a degree burn, for example, a second-degree burn over some percentage of their body. So we're going to look at those two criteria. First criteria we use to estimate the total surface area affected, like you see in this picture here. What if the burn covered the entire arm? Well, that's 9% of the body. What if it covered both legs? Well, they're 18% each, so that's 36% of their body. So this is just a simple estimation used to determine the total surface area affected, and they call it the rule of nines. Nines because each of these body areas is a factor of 9. But the rule of nines doesn't tell us the whole story. You could have burns in 90% of your body, but they might be mild burns, so it's not that severe. You can have burns over only 10% of your body, but they might be a severe burn, which would make it critical. So that's why we need another criteria, not just the surface area affected, but how deep does the burn penetrate. That's where we use the degrees. So a first-degree burn remains in the epidermis, like a sunburn, like you see here. So if we look at this image, we can see the burn has not penetrated into the dermis. There's the stratum basale. The burn is kept inside the epidermis, and that is a first-degree burn. It's going to have redness, that's erythema. It'll be painful. There can be some fluid buildup, which is edema, but it is a mild type of burn. A second-degree burn enters the dermis, but does not go all the way through the dermis. You can see here the burn has penetrated the epidermis through that stratum basale, through the basement membrane. Now we're within the dermis, but there's still some dermis remaining. Here's the hypodermis, it's unaffected. So a second-degree burn is damage to the entire epidermis and the upper dermis, not the deeper part of the dermis. It's very painful. A lot of nerve endings here that we saw in previous videos. Blisters tend to occur. Takes a little longer to heal, of course, than the first-degree burns. So these are second-degree burns. Some of the dermis is affected, but not the entire dermis. And a third-degree burn penetrates the entire dermis and then, therefore, is into deeper structures. So here it is, epidermis and dermis completely burned through. Possibly no pain. It does say no pain. That's because the nociceptors, or free nerve endings, have been burnt off. Yeah, but realize if there's third-degree burns somewhere, there's likely to be second-degree burns right next to it, which would be very painful. This is not an oozing area like we saw with a second-degree burn. Instead, it's dry, gray-white, could be black in color. Skin grafting is usually needed to prevent infection and fluid loss. That's a procedure to put artificial or animal skin, or sometimes your own grafted skin, right onto the burned area. So there's the 3 degrees of burns, and be careful with the difference between second and third degree. Second not the entire dermis, but third degree burns the entire dermis, therefore into the deeper layers. To determine whether a burn is critical, we need both criteria, the rule of nines and the degrees. So if a lesser burn, like a second degree burn, I don't want to make light of a second degree burn, but over 25% of your body needs to be burned in the second degree for it to be critical. A third degree burn, only 10% or more of the body has to be affected for it to be critical. That's why we need these two criteria to make a determination.